All right. So, project management and organization of the project. This is where we're talking about which people are part of the project and how we organize these people and what considerations that we should give to the different roles in our project. Project organization, this responsibility for the project. So it is the people who are taking care of and ensuring that the project is done and it is successful. And often you divide the responsibilities into some responsibility cards. One which is the activities. So the activities going on in the project, development of a module in a software or a foundation for a bridge or data collection in a school project. Then we have the milestone responsibility. That's the ones where you see the the deliverables. And then we have the general responsibility. That's the link between the basic organization, the basic company, and the project organization. And then it also determines the project role. So who does what, when, why. The classic structure is like this: a project manager who has a project group and often a reference group. If it's a little bit larger project, you'll have a steering committee and a project owner. I'll get back to what all the different terms are. Often a project becomes a little bit bigger, and then you can have sub project groups, and you can have multiple project managers taking care of each part of the project. For example, in Bangladesh, where I was there, uh, and did a spin-off for Telenor, I had a sub-project group which was dealing with the legal parts and a project manager for legal issues. I had a project manager for the IT setup and IT issues. I had one for business organization there, and I had one for finance. So I had four different project managers working below me. And if you look a little bit on this organizational structure here, you'll see that it actually mirrors a regular company structure. Here you have the different departments at the bottom, and you have the CEO as the project manager. You have some supporting group, and you have a board on top of it. Uh, to a large extent, that's also how the project works. You have a project manager who prepares things for the steering committee and manages and controls and coordinates the different project groups, just like a CEO in the company would coordinate them. The project owner or the sponsor is a really, really important person in the project. If we take the relation to the regular company, you'd say, okay, this person is often the director of the board, the top guy. Um, we talked about this thing about a project value creation and project being successful, that being two different things. The project owner and sponsor responsibility is that the project creates value. The project manager need to meet the goals, but the owner need to meet the value creation. He's the one who approves the mandate and major changes, make sure that the resources are provided. Steering committee chairman or director, just like in the company board, ambassador within the organization, and support coach for the project manager, and the one who ensures top management support. Uh, in my experience, it's also often a part of the top management. So it's a CXO, head of marketing, head of finance, head of production, or even the CEO of the company. This also means that the more important and controversial a project is, the higher you want that person to be in your organization. Which also means that you have to promise me one thing. If you have a critical project which is complex and complicated and potentially controversial, run away from the project if you don't get a project sponsor, which is at the absolute top level of the organization. Never get to do the project, because if you don't get a person high enough up, you'll not be able to get the resources, you'll not be able to do the things that is required for this project to be a success. So organizational cloud, knowledge about the organization, spokesman for your project, make sure that, hey, you guy over there, you need to give the resources to the project. You need to be able to say that, and he signifies a lot of value. So if it's some low-level production manager who's the project sponsor, well, it also shows the rest of the organization, well, this is not such an important project. The steering committee is kind of like the board that says, often you have one person which is a little bit different from the rest, because that's the project initiator, the guy or the girl who came up with the idea for this project. Just like a board, it ensures resources for the project in general, makes general decisions, provides the support and anchoring across the organization, because this person often has, or sorry, these persons are placed in different parts of the organization which has an interest. Remember the stakeholder analysis that we've been talking about? Here it is representative for the different stakeholders who get together in this steering committee. It's also the group which makes the decision on initiating the project and terminating the project. The last bullet here, makes political and principled decision, is something that you need to remember. If there are things in the project that you're working on that is political, tricky, principle in the nature, don't take the decision as project manager yourself. You want to push that upwards to the steering committee, because, say, for example, you could have a project which meant that somebody needs to get fired. Then you say, hey, okay, I don't want to take that decision. I put it up into the steering committee, let them take the decision, and they tell you officially that, yes, you need to fire these people. And in that case, when these people are fired, you can point at the steering committee and say, hey, it's their fault. It's not mine.
Mhm. So
So
that the blame doesn't come directly on you.
exactly. We don't want to blame to fall on the project. We want it to fall on the steering committee. Um, Also, when you do it, remember this is just like a board, so you need to work with it just like a board. Make sure that the purpose for each meeting is done. If there are conflicts in the organization, they will also be shown here. So therefore, just when I recommend people on working with boards, make sure you don't make any decisions within the meetings of the steering committee or within the board meeting. And the reason for this, it will delay things. If people have to get all their say, all the discussions done within these meetings, people will rather say, now we'll wait with making a decision if we can, if we're not 100% certain. So therefore you go around to the different persons in the steering committee, make sure you know what their interest is, make sure you know what they want in the different decisions that you want from the steering committee meetings, so that when they meet up, Well, everything is laid out already. There's no real discussions. Of course, somebody needs to say, "Yeah, I think this," and others say that I think that. But you already have the decision before you go into that meeting. All right. Project manager, you guys here responsible for the project goals and deliverables. And note again, this is not the same as the project creating value. Managing of the project, making sure things are going according to the plan, and then hand over to production if it's a project which is going on into. So it moves from project to operational status. Say the project is a new machine in the production. Well, then you have the machine set up, everything is plugged in, and the operators are trained. That's the project manager who makes sure that it is handed over there, or it's an IT project, everything is implemented, and the IT department is now ready to maintain it moving forward. Also in charge of the project group, kind of makes sense, and continuous contact with the project owner and reports to the steering committee, the two levels that I've just talked about. Also the handling of the stakeholders and communication. And this is why a key component for a project manager task is communication. A lot of it is actually making sure that all the stakeholders are informed with the right information at the right time, because then they are more likely to support the project. Most people will be annoyed by surprises. So therefore, giving them a heads up before there are any issues, saying, well, it goes okay right now. In 2 weeks, we might have an issue with this thing here. If people know it up front, well, then they will be much more willing to accept any issues later on, because it doesn't come as a surprise. But it's all down to the communication and the speaking for the project. So facilitating decision with the steering committee and communication, key for a project manager. How much the project manager should know about the content of the project is a little bit more tricky, because do you need to be an IT expert to be an IT project manager? Not really. It helps, and you need to have a certain level, but you don't need to be the absolute expert. That's actually what you have the project team members for. Often you also see project managers managing multiple projects at the same time. Sometimes they also have a regular job that they have to work on. But all in all, good communication skills. The reference group, I don't know if you've heard that term before. Most people know about a project manager and a project team and a project. Then the steering committee comes in as something new and a sponsor, and then the reference group. The reference group is not necessarily a part of the project, but they are the ones who's going to use the results of the project. So that would be the operator of the machine, or the user of the IT system, or the marketeer of the new branding strategy. They are the ones who knows about the specifics of this field. So they will be able to tell, when you install a machine which is this heavy, you need to reinforce the floor below the machine. So therefore, they are extremely important in this domain knowledge. And like I said, well, if you have the IT system running in this way, that those persons here will get annoyed, because they know the different areas of the company. And if they're good, they'll be ambassadors for the project. So they will speak well for the project into the organization, which is going to use the project afterwards. So if it's a customer project, so you have a paying customer and you're an outsourcing company, Well, these persons comes from the customer company, and therefore ensures that it works in their company later on. Project group, those who does the work and responsible for the tasks deliverables. There's also this small slide here about the team rules, and it's one of the things which is important for a project manager to be aware of. When you have the project running, there are what's called expressed rules and unexpressed rules. So what we have set is the rule, but there's also unambiguous and ambiguous, so rules which can be interpreted. So let's say the example I usually use is the express rule in the group is that we meet on time. All right. Is on time ambiguous or unambiguous? Is it something that can be discussed? Most people would say, no, it's not something that we can discuss. It's just what it is. But then when you ask them a little bit more deeply, on time, is that right on the dot? Or is it also okay to be 5 minutes late? Or do you need to be 5 minutes before? And for the most part, people actually don't agree on that. A lot of people say it's okay to be from 5 minutes before until on time. Other cultures, you say, half an hour late is okay. Middle East is especially challenging in that way. And but all things that they are on time. So what you want to do as a project manager is to move things from ambiguous and unexpressed towards the unambiguous, because anytime you have unexpressed rules which are or ambiguous rules, you have the potential for conflict. So taking things up, talking about that, you might think that you everybody in the group agrees on it, but how do they interpret it needs to be talked out. And especially something about deliverables, quality levels, and those kind of things. So you're sure that good enough is good enough and timely is timely. Also, this here is important to consider in organizing the project. The values. If the situation of the company is going in one direction and your project is going in another direction, say the company is earning a lot of money, but your project is about cost reductions. Your project is conflicting with the situation of the company, and therefore you will get a lot of pushback. If you are going to do a quality project in an advertising agency or a creative bureau, then you'll also get in conflict, because those are people who would want to do a little bit here, a little bit there, don't want to document things. So again, conflicting. So when you have a project which is conflicting with the organizational values, we move upwards in terms of who should be the project owner and sponsor. We need to have a very, very strong steering committee and reference group, because otherwise you'll not be able to create this transformation of the values that you're actually working on here.